Continuamos con el verbo to be en tiempo pasado, junto a preposiciones.
And because of those words, when I was on a bus going to school,
and when I was on campus, I felt really at home. Everyone was so caring. Everyone was so kind. There was a
order of a warrant. So what I said last time I was on, when I was on here with you, was to hang in there. And
box, they don't think of the norm, and that's how I was when I was on the football field. So
actually do something, because when I was on the ground in Ferguson for CNN,
culture, you know, when I was on TV, and frankly, when I was on a plane last night, I asked my wife.
It was that I was working on when I was on the transition team.
me. Yeah. And you know, it speaks really well too, because not so long ago when I was on Oprah, I remember a couple
museum, but I did when I was on the College of Arts and Architecture Alumni Board. I really liked
it. And I remember many years later when I was on the faculty at Melbourne, I was suddenly thinking, who
a grown man when I was on Nickelodeon.
And this all came to a head when I was on a backpacking trip.
And nearly every show, when I was on Anderson Cooper's show, Paul Zahn,
you're going to have a very tough time. When I was on the Yo Corporation, I asked Jeff Brent.
But when I was on the phone with him asking why he was going to do the surgery, this was a
couple years later, when I was on another trip down to Sierra Leone,
my friend Oliver. This was back in 2002.
Of fame was when I was on the Bill Maher television show.
For me, a young Rhodes Scholar who came on to work for me when I was in the United States Senate.
Where it was the wholesale business that was actually, and when I was at West Beach, I could see where it was the wholesale business that was actually.
I mean, when I was at whatever level you're at, when I was in high school and.
My children. When I was at Google, Google has glorious maternity leave policies.
Mathematics, when I was at Harvard many, many years ago.
Ben Palendo, and he has a theater company called Theater Me Too. And I met him when I was at NYU and did a lot of
television. I interned when I was at OU as an undergrad. I interned.
President's chief of staff, that he and I met when I was at the FBI. I was chief of staff.
When I tell the story, but back when I was at Apple,
likewise, when I was at the Office of the Attorney General.
And Jim Miller, head of the program, who had to.
When's reporting, even when I was at the receiving end. When's reporting, even when I was at the receiving end.
So even when I was at.
You did that full time. You know what I loved? When I was at your office.
Back and started working for Danny Meyer. That's when I was at.
They could afford to become our biggest donors at MIT. When I was at graduate school at Harvard.
When I was at the White House, I saw firsthand the way.
I had a similar situation when I was at the department. I had a visit.
But when I was at NIST, my name.
Yeah, social media first came onto my radar when I was at college, my sophomore.
Example of when I was at the show in 1973.
Amidst the melt. When I was in Greenland, I scattered my mother's ashes.
It all happened for me about 30 years ago when I was in graduate school.
And it wouldn't be until years later when I was in college and my brother was in college.
When I was in the 6th grade and the 7th grade.
When I was in your shoes, I didn't really know a lot about college type. When I was in your shoes, I had a lot of questions about personal statements.
A case that comes to mind occurred when I was in Japan, and I was in a place where
Jimmy Buffett, but you know, when I was in college, I studied.
They didn't live through it. They didn't sit there and read the Star Report in the Barnes & Noble like I did when I was in my 20s.
Interested in doing when I was in my teens and 20s. I went.
young. That is a piece of life advice I got when I was in college, and it's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever got.
An example of this, years ago when I was in New York, I was
and overcome, right? And so when I was in school, many
When I was in about 7th grade.
When I was in college, they passed away.
When I was in the lab and I was taking these data,
years later, when I was in college and studying basic physics.
At a young age, we moved up to LA when I was in high school.
You know, when I was in the military,
even going back to when I was in middle school. And
so there was a period of time when I was in this MRI tube for hours, and it was hours. It was.
When I was in college, the college that I went to had an exchange program with Oxford, and